The orphanage on Kepler 442b was a cold, metallic place, sterile and unwelcoming, despite the faint hum of artificial sunlight that bathed the corridors. Among its residents was Lyra, a small alien girl with silvery skin that shimmered faintly under the neon lights and eyes the color of storm clouds. Lyra had always been different in ways that made other children stare, whisper, and avoid her. Her delicate antennae twitched nervously whenever anyone approached, and her soft voice rarely rose above a whisper. She was brilliant, clever even, but her severe social anxiety kept her isolated. Every day, she watched the other children play in the courtyard from behind the reinforced glass. Their laughter sounded like a foreign language to her ears, full of joy she could not reach. When someone tried to speak to her, she would shrink back, her shoulders hunching as if she could fold into herself and disappear entirely. Staff tried their best to coax her out of her shell, but Lyra's trust was a fortress built over years of loneliness and fear. It was on a drizzly morning when the artificial rain fell softly across the playground that a new presence arrived at the orphanage. Dr. Elias Rowan, a human volunteer known for his work in interstellar adoption programs. He was tall, warm-eyed, and moved with a calmness that seemed to ripple through the sterile corridors. He didn't rush the children or bark instructions. He simply observed, listened, and smiled. But when his gaze landed on Lyra, something in him softened. He noticed the way she flinched when anyone approached and the tiny marks on her arms where she sometimes scratched absent-mindedly, lost in her own anxious world. "Hello, Lyra," he said gently, crouching so his face was at her level. Lyra's antennae stiffened, and she barely whispered a greeting in response. Dr. Rowan didn't push. He simply nodded and left, but not without leaving a small, neatly wrapped package by her cot. The package contained a tiny, trembling puppy with fur as white as the clouds on her home planet and eyes so dark they seemed to hold the universe within them. First, Lyra froze. She had never touched a living creature so small and fragile before. The puppy yipped softly, nudging her hand with its wet nose. Her heart thumped wildly. Over the next few days, the puppy, whom she quietly named Comet, became her constant companion. Lyra would wake early to feed him, talk to him in whispers, and let him curl against her shoulder as she lay awake at night. Comet was fearless, bounding around the orphanage with boundless energy, and slowly Lyra began to mirror some of that courage. She laughed softly when he tumbled over his own paws, a sound that startled even herself. Dr. Rowan observed from afar, careful not to intrude but always present when Lyra seemed ready to interact. One afternoon, he approached with a ball in his hand. "Comet loves to play fetch," he said gently. "Would you like to try?" Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She threw the ball, her movements awkward at first, but Comet sprinted after it with unrestrained joy. When he returned, tail wagging, Lyra's face lit up with a smile that had been rare for years. The simple act of tossing a ball, the trust between her and the tiny creature, was the first bridge to the outside world. Weeks passed, and Lyra's anxiety began to soften, though it never disappeared entirely. With Comet by her side, she ventured into the courtyard, slowly at first, just enough to toss a ball or watch other children from a distance. And gradually, those children began to notice her. One by one they came closer, curious about the little girl who always had the adorable puppy in her arms. One chilly morning, Lyra sat on a bench, Comet perched on her lap, watching a group of children build a small hovercraft model. A young alien boy approached, holding a piece of the model. "Do you want to help?" he asked nervously. Lyra's antennae twitched, and she hesitated. Comet barked once, as if encouraging her. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. Her fingers brushed against the boy's as they worked together, and for the first time, she felt a spark of connection. The following weeks were filled with small victories. Lyra learned to join group activities, speak more confidently, and even laugh at jokes that once seemed unintelligible. Her fear of social interaction hadn't vanished, but Comet's unwavering presence made the world feel less threatening. The puppy became the bridge between her and the other children, a reminder that trust could grow slowly, nurtured by kindness and patience. One evening, as the neon lights dimmed across the orphanage, Lyra sat in the courtyard with Comet nestled against her chest. Dr. Rowan approached, carrying a warm cup of synth tea. "You've come a long way, Lyra," he said softly. "Not everyone can face the world when it feels so big and scary. But you've shown courage." Lyra looked up at him, her storm cloud eyes glistening. "It's Comet," she whispered. He made me brave." Dr. Rowan smiled, understanding perfectly. Sometimes courage doesn't come from within. Sometimes it comes from a friend who believes in you. Years later, when Lyra left the orphanage to study interstellar biology, she did so not as the shy, trembling girl who hid behind walls, but as a young alien who had learned to trust, to laugh, and to connect. Comet, older but still full of spirit, ran beside her as she boarded the transport shuttle, wagging his tail and reminding her of the journey they had shared. Lyra never forgot the fear that had once ruled her life, nor the small puppy who had challenged it. In a universe that often felt cold and vast, she had found warmth, trust, and the courage to step into the light. And in that light, she knew she would never be alone again. Years passed, and Lyra grew into a confident young alien, no longer the trembling, anxious child she had once been. The orphanage that had felt so cold and isolating became a place of fond memories, because it was where she had learned to trust and to connect, with a little help from Comet, her fearless puppy. Together, they had ventured into the courtyard, shared moments of laughter with other children, and built bonds that once seemed impossible. When the day came for her to leave the orphanage and study interstellar biology, Lyra felt a flutter of nerves, but this time she was ready. Comet, now older but still spirited, trotted beside her as she boarded the transport shuttle. His wagging tail and bright eyes were a reminder of the courage she had discovered in herself. Dr. Rowan, watching from the landing platform, gave her a warm smile. "Remember," he said, "courage sometimes comes from those who believe in us, even when we cannot believe in ourselves." Lyra hugged Comet tightly, whispering, "Thank you for everything." The puppy licked her cheek, as if understanding every word. As the shuttle lifted off, Lyra looked out at the expanse of stars stretching infinitely across the sky. The universe no longer felt overwhelming or lonely. It felt full of possibility. With Comet by her side, she had learned that fear could be faced, that trust could be given, and that even the smallest friend could ignite the greatest change. And for the first time, Lyra smiled without hesitation, knowing that no matter where her journey took her, she would never truly be alone again.